Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was one of the most popular African citizens of the 20th century and a prominent politician in Nigeria. Azikiwe escaped death in January 1966 when young army majors staged a violent coup that removed him and Tafawa Balewa from power. So, who was Dr. Nnamdi Benjamin Azikiwe and how did he escape assassination during the coup? Was he aware of the coup beforehand, or was it a coincidence of fate? Welcome to this edition of Hispo Media. Gabriel here. The name Nnamdi Azikiwe, popularly known as Zik of Africa, means different things to different people, not only in Nigeria, but across the African continent and among the rest of the black race. During the decades of decolonization of the last century, the name was synonymous with pan-africanism and emancipation of colonized people of Africa. Similarly, for the greater part of the 20th century, the name Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Great Zik of Africa, was a recurring decimal in Nigerian politics. He stood out significantly among his contemporaries. But before we analyze how he managed to escape assassination, unlike most of his political contemporaries in July 1966, let us first of all examine the man known to history as Dr. Nnamdi Benjamin Azikiwe. But guys, before we continue, kindly take a moment to book the like button on this video and subscribe to Hispo Media so you don't miss another episode. Thank you. From a very humble background, Nnamdi Azikiwe was born on Wednesday, 16th of November 1904. He was born in Zongeru, a community in what was then Wushishi district of Niger province in the Northern Protectorate of colonial Nigeria. Azikiwe was born into the family of Mr. Obededom Chukwuemeka Azikiwe and Mrs. Rachel Chinwe Azikiwe. Both parents were Igbo indigenes of Onitsha in the then Southern Protectorate of Nigeria. At the time of his birth, his father was working as a clerk with a section of the military department of the colonial government. The department constituted part of the Nigerian regiment of the British West African Frontier Force located at Zongeru. The young Nnamdi lived the first 8 years of his life between 1904 and 1912 in Zongeru, where he learned and became conversant with the Hausa language. Like most of his contemporaries, the young Nnamdi began his educational career at Onitsha, his paternal home. He commenced his first primary education at the Holy Trinity School of the Roman Catholic Mission in 1912. But for two reasons. First, for Christian denominational reasons. Being a Protestant by faith, his father ensured that he was moved from the Catholic Mission School to a school owned by one of the Protestant denominations. Consequently, between 1912 and 1915, the young Nnamdi attended many primary schools. Not only that, the young Nnamdi was equally compelled to change school as often as his civil servant father was transferred from place to place. In 1915, Nnamdi Azikiwe relocated from Onitsha and joined his parents, who resided in Lagos at the time. Here, in continuation of his educational career, he was enrolled into the Methodist Boys High School in 1916. Shortly thereafter, he continued his educational career at Onitsha and later moved to Calabar in 1920. In Calabar, the young Nnamdi attended the famous Hope Waddell Training Institute in Calabar. His experience at Hope Waddell would go on to inspire and influence his later views on the redemption of the black man, among others. Nnamdi Azikiwe left Hope Waddell in 1920 for Wesleyan Boys High School, Lagos, where he continued his education. It was from then that Nnamdi Azikiwe began to think of furthering his education in the United States. While at Wesleyan Boys High School in December 1920, he excelled in his studies and won a prize for which he was given a book on the biography of James A. Garfield, a former president of the United States who rose from grass to grace. The book galvanized the young Nnamdi, who was just 16 years at the time, and he became even more determined to succeed in life. But his desire to embark on a trip to the United States to further his education did not materialize in 1920. Consequently, he wrote the civil service entrance examination in 1921. He was successful in the examination and was employed as a clerk in the Nigerian Treasury in Lagos. That became his place of work from 1921 to 1924. But his innate desire for education and his belief that education was the key to advance in Africa had continued to propel the young Nnamdi. After a series of attempts, he finally gained admission, and in 1925, he officially left Nigeria to attend Storer College, West Virginia, in the United States. To fund his living expenses and tuition, he worked a number of menial jobs before enrolling in Howard University in Washington, D.C. in 1927 to obtain a bachelor's degree in political science. In 1929, he transferred from Howard University to Lincoln University to complete his undergraduate studies and graduated in 1930 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science. He then enrolled at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania and in the University of Pennsylvania simultaneously in 1930, receiving a master's degree in religion and philosophy from Lincoln University in 1932 and a master's degree in anthropology from the University of Pennsylvania in 1933. He also obtained a certificate in journalism from Teachers College, Columbia University in 1930. While as a graduate student at the University of Pennsylvania, Nnamdi Azikiwe met Marcus Garvey and other leaders of the Back to Africa movement. While in the United States of America, Nnamdi Azikiwe never for once forgets the plight of his people in Africa. In 1934, Azikiwe returned to Africa where he began a career in journalism and politics. On his return to Africa and buoyed by his pan-Africanist idealism, Azikiwe took up appointment in the Gold Coast in late 1934 as the editor-in-chief of the African Money Post, a daily newspaper. In 1936, while still the editor of the African Money Post, Nnamdi Azikiwe was prosecuted for sedition by the colonial administration along with Mr. Wallace Johnson. This prosecution was in connection with an article entitled "Has Africa a God?" published on Friday, May 15, 1936 edition of the newspaper. The fallout from this incident was a contributory factor to the return of Nnamdi Azikiwe to Nigeria in 1937. On his return to Nigeria in 1937, Azikiwe established the West African Pilot in Lagos, which he was the editor-in-chief from 1937 to 1945. He went on to become the managing director of Zik Press Limited, and by the 1940s, he has invested more than £5,000 in the development of Zik Group of newspapers. Azikiwe used his media influence to great effect in championing pan-Africanism. After more than a decade of working as a writer, Azikiwe was elected to the Nigerian Legislative Council in 1947 and began a career in government. Meanwhile, before then, Nnamdi Azikiwe had joined the Nigerian Youth Movement (NYM) in 1934 and became an active member of the first nationalist organization in the country. However, he later resigned from the NYM, citing leadership discrimination and bias. This move would divide the movement along ethnic lines. About a decade after joining the NYM in 1944, Azikiwe co-founded the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon (NCNC) with Herbert Macaulay and became the Secretary General of the Council in 1946. Following Azikiwe's ideals for self-governance and political independence, a youth movement called the Zikist Movement was established in 1946 to fight against colonial autocracy. Azikiwe became the premier of the Eastern region in 1954 after a new constitution was put into effect in the country. By 1959, he led the NCNC into the all-important 1959 federal elections, which preceded Nigeria's independence. He was able to form a temporary government with a powerful Northern People's Congress, but its deputy leader Abubakar Tafawa Balewa took the key position of Prime Minister. Azikiwe received the largely honorary positions of President of the Senate, Governor General, and finally, President. He became the first indigenous Governor General of Nigeria. In a letter dated 26 October 1960, Nnamdi Azikiwe personally invited Martin Luther King to attend his official inauguration as Governor General of Nigeria. Martin Luther obliged and was present during the inauguration. When Nigeria became a republic in October 1963, Tafawa Balewa became the Prime Minister and head of government, while Benjamin Nnamdi Azikiwe became the President or head of state and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. It was this position that he held until the January 15, 1966 coup, in which he escaped death narrowly. But more on that shortly. Meanwhile, during the Civil War, Nnamdi Azikiwe initially supported the Biafran cause. By 1968, he traveled extensively to win support and recognition for Biafra. But in 1969, after realizing the folly of the war, he threw his support for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, how did he escape assassination in 1966? After almost 6 years of political independence, the country's future had become uncertain, leading to the first military intervention in the country. The coup, which led to the death of the Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa and other prominent politicians and military personnel, saw Azikiwe escape. The casualties were mostly from the northern and western region. Glaringly, the president of the nation, himself of Eastern origin, like most of the plotters, escaped assassination. So, how did this happen? At the time of the January 15, 1966 coup in Nigeria, the president Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was not in the country. Officially, Dr. Azikiwe was on leave when the soldiers struck. He had handed over power to the Senate President Dr. Rizu as acting president. The president Nnamdi Azikiwe had left the country in late 1965, first for Europe and then on a health cruise to the Caribbean. Many observers have accused Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna of leaking the plot to his cousin and kinsman, President Nnamdi Azikiwe. Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna is one of the masterminds and overall leader of the coup. Interestingly, assuming reports that he had foreknowledge are true, Azikiwe did not notify his alliance partner, the Prime Minister Alhaji Tafawa Balewa. The two had clashed over control of the armed forces during the constitutional crisis of 1965 following the controversial December 1964 federal elections. In fact, President Nnamdi Azikiwe's personal physician Dr. Humphrey Edemodia abandoned him abroad when he got tired of the head trip, having run out of his personal Estacode allowances. He was unaware that there may have been a good reason why Azikiwe did not want to return to Nigeria. The original planned return date was in December 1965, but Azikiwe did not return. Not even the Commonwealth Prime Minister's Conference in Lagos, which ended on January 12, could bring him back to Lagos. However, in a statement to the press in England on January 16, a day after the coup, Azikiwe, among other things, said, unquote, "Violence has never been an instrument used by us as founding fathers of the Nigerian Republic to solve political problems. I consider it most unfortunate that our young thugs decided to introduce the element of violence revolution into Nigerian politics. No matter how they and our general public might have been provoked by obstinate and perhaps grasping politicians, it is an unwise policy. As far as I am concerned, I regard the killing of our political and military leaders as a national calamity." End of quote. But it appears it is not only Azikiwe that was pre-informed of the coup. Sources claim that Chief Samuel Ladoke Akintola, the premier of the Western region, was also pre-informed of the coup. If that is true, it is not clear who leaked the plot to him. Notwithstanding, he was said to have intimated Sir Ahmadu Bello, the premier of the northern region, about the impending plot a day before the coup. The Are Onaka Kanfo allegedly advised that both leaders should flee Nigeria to Niger Republic. However, both leaders took no action. Chief Akintola was in Kaduna as guest of the Sardauna of Sokoto on January 14, 1966. The northern premier had concluded plans to travel to Sokoto for the Muslim Salah holiday on January 15. Meanwhile, if the assertions that Zik, like Akintola, was tipped off are true, then it is clear that Nnamdi Azikiwe apparently chooses discretion in place of valor. He chose to watch events from overseas rather than being caught in the midst of action. In any case, according to Ademoyega, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was not penciled down for arrest. He said, unquote, "Only the heads of government, that is Prime Minister, the 4 regional premiers and their right-hand men, were considered most essential to arrest throughout the country." It is not clear if Nnamdi Azikiwe was aware of this plan. Notwithstanding, he chose not to take chances but to stay away. So, was this a wise decision? Let me know in the comment section. But after escaping assassination in 1966, Nnamdi Azikiwe died of natural cause on May 11, 1996 at the ripe age of 92 years. For the story of the assassination of Nigeria's first and only Prime Minister, Alhaji Tafawa Balewa, please click the video displayed here. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hispo Media. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.